PlayStation 1. Sony didn't just stumble into gaming. After a failed partnership with Nintendo, Sony turned rejection into a revolution. The PlayStation 1, released in 1994, used CD-ROMs instead of cartridges, giving developers more storage space for richer audio, full motion video, and longer, more cinematic games. Suddenly, gaming wasn't just for kids, it was for everyone. Titles like Final Fantasy VII, Metal Gear Solid, and Resident Evil proved that storytelling could rival Hollywood. With sleek branding, aggressive marketing, and a deep third-party library, Sony crushed expectations and sold over 100 million units worldwide. Sega stumbled, Nintendo looked outdated, and a new king emerged. Sony was able to launch a true movement in the video game world, and in doing so, they forever changed what gaming could be. This wasn't a side project for electronics nerds. It was the start of an empire that would define multiple generations, and it all began with a CD drive, a controller, and a whole lot of ambition. PlayStation 2. When the PlayStation 2 dropped in 2000, it skyrocketed Sony's momentum. This wasn't a sequel, it was a takeover. The PS2 played DVDs, which instantly made it a must-have for families who didn't even game. It was sleek, powerful, and forward-thinking. But more than anything, it had the games. GTA 3 reinvented open worlds. Shadow of the Colossus told stories through silence and scale. Metal Gear Solid 2, Final Fantasy X, God of War, each pushed the limits of creativity and hardware. And the controller? Familiar but improved. Over 3,800 titles hit the system during its lifespan, and by the time it retired, it had sold a record-breaking 155 million units, making it the best-selling console of all time. The timing was perfect. The DVD boom, massive third-party support, and a generation raced on the PS1 ready to level up. The PS2 was the moment gaming became mainstream, loud, cinematic, and undeniable. PSP. In 2004, Sony looked at the handheld market and said, let's raise the bar. The result? The PlayStation Portable, a device that looked futuristic and felt premium. With a glossy wide screen, impressive 3D graphics, and multimedia capabilities, the PSP felt like a console in your pocket. You could play full games, watch movies, browse the web, even listen to music. While the Nintendo DS leaned into innovation with two screens, the PSP flexed raw power. Titles like God of War Chains of Olympus, Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII, and Daxter brought higher caliber franchises to mobile in ways that hadn't been done before. It also introduced the world to digital storefronts with the PlayStation Store going portable. The PSP sold over 80 million units, not enough to dethrone Nintendo, but more than enough to prove that Sony could succeed in handhelds. It was sleek, it was capable, and it made portable gaming feel luxurious. Even now, fans look back on it as the most stylish and powerful handheld of its time. PlayStation 3. 2006 wasn't easy for Sony. The PlayStation 3 launched with a brutal $599 price tag, a confusing dual SKU rollout, and architecture that developers hated. Microsoft had a year head start with the Xbox 360, and early games on PS3 looked worse. The media wrote Sony off, but they adapted. Slowly, developers learned the cell processor. Sony cut the price, added more hard drive space, and stacked the lineup. By mid-gen, the PS3 had roared back. Uncharted 2 redefined cinematic gameplay. The Last of Us delivered one of the most emotional stories in gaming. Metal Gear Solid 4 and Killzone 2 flexed raw horsepower. The PS3 also pushed digital with PSN, introducing trophies, and helped normalize HD gaming. It ended up selling 87 million units, which was a massive comeback given its rocky start. The PS3 wasn't the easiest console to love in its early days, but it fought tooth and nail to earn respect, and it ended up becoming one of Sony's most creatively daring eras. PlayStation Vita. Sony's new handheld, the PlayStation Vita, launched in 2011 as a powerhouse. OLED screen, dual analog sticks, back touchpad, cross-play with PS3. On paper, it seemed flawless. Hardcore gamers were hyped. The Vita felt like a console shrunk down to pocket size. Games like Gravity Rush and Uncharted Golden Abyss proved the hardware could deliver. Remote play extended your experience, and indie support brought endless games. But it couldn't overcome two big hurdles: price and support. Memory cards were expensive, and third-party developers abandoned the system early. Meanwhile, smartphones began swallowing the casual gaming market. The Vita sold about 16 million units, far below its potential. Still, it developed a cult following. To this day, it's considered one of the most beloved failed consoles. It had passion, style, and performance. It just never found its audience. The Vita may not have dominated, but for those who owned one, it wasn't just a handheld. It was a hidden gem ahead of its time. PlayStation 4. After the missteps of the PS3 launch, Sony entered 2013 with a clean strategy. Make it simple, make it powerful, and make it for gamers. The PlayStation 4 nailed the landing. Priced lower than the Xbox One and free from confusing DRM messaging, the PS4 immediately won the conversation. But more than good PR, it had the games. Bloodborne, Spider-Man, Horizon Zero Dawn, hit after hit. Sony also embraced indie games, expanded streaming with SharePlay and Twitch integration, and made digital ownership smoother. The DualShock 4 redefined the field, and the console's UI was fast, clean, and accessible. Over its life cycle, the PS4 sold more than 117 million units worldwide. It became the default console for a generation and a return to dominance for Sony. No gimmicks, no noise, just games, power, and performance. It was the redemption arc the company needed, and for millions of gamers, the PS4 was the console that reminded them why they fell in love with gaming in the first place. PlayStation VR. In 2016, Sony took a leap few expected. They entered the virtual reality space. PlayStation VR wasn't the most powerful headset on the market, but it was the most accessible. No need for a gaming PC, just plug it into your PS4 and go. That low barrier made VR mainstream for the first time. And the games weren't gimmicks. Astrobot Rescue Mission proved VR could do platforming. Resident Evil became a horror legend in virtual reality. Beat Saber turned motion into music. While competitors struggled with setup and costs, PSVR focused on simplicity and fun. It sold over 5 million units, a modest number compared to consoles, but massive for VR. It helped normalize the tech and showed that immersive gameplay was here. Sony didn't invent VR, they made it feel like something you'd actually use at home. And in doing so, they brought a new dimension to the PlayStation ecosystem, literally. PlayStation 5. Late 2020, the world's locked down, and Sony launched the PlayStation 5 into a supply chain nightmare. But even with limited stock, it became a sensation. The PS5 is more powerful and it feels next-gen. The SSD makes load times nearly disappear. Ray tracing and 4K support redefine visuals. But it's the DualSense controller that steals the show. With adaptive triggers and haptic feedback, games feel like alive in your hands. Titles like Demon's Souls, Ratchet & Clank, Rift Apart, and Spider-Man 2 show off the console's muscle. And Sony continues to deliver with new IPs and third-party partnerships. Despite chip shortages, the PS5 quickly surpasses 50 million units sold by 2024. The console is massive, physically and in impact, but everything about it screams premium. Sony wasn't just playing catch-up, they were setting the standard again. With every generation, they evolve. But with the PS5, they reminded the world, nobody does console launches quite like us. PlayStation Portal. By 2023, Sony leaned harder into mobility with the PlayStation Portal, a device designed purely for streaming PS5 games via remote play over Wi-Fi. Not a standalone console, not a Vita successor, just an elegant, dedicated way to extend your PS5 experience around the house. With a large 8-inch LCD and full-size DualSense controls, the Portal offered the familiarity of a controller with the convenience of a tablet. No need to fight over the TV anymore. Your PS5 library now in bed, on the couch, or even in the kitchen. It wasn't for everyone. You needed fast Wi-Fi and it didn't support cloud streaming at launch. But for hardcore PlayStation fans, it was a dream. It also hinted at Sony's vision for the future, where games follow you, not the other way around. The Portal wasn't flashy, but it showed that PlayStation understands how we play, and more importantly, where we want to play. The future of PlayStation. So where does PlayStation go from here? Everywhere. Sony is no longer just making consoles. PlayStation Plus now offers Game Pass-style tiers. Cloud gaming is inching towards prime time. Studios like Naughty Dog and Santa Monica are expanding their universes into TV and film. The Last of Us on HBO was only the beginning. Meanwhile, PC ports of PlayStation exclusive are becoming the norm, not the exception. Live service titles are in development, hinting at a future beyond single-player storytelling. It's not about boxes anymore, it's about access. screens, platforms, universes. Sony knows that the industry is shifting and they're not sitting still. The console may still be the centerpiece, but the real power lies in the network they're building around it. One thing's clear, PlayStation's future isn't limited to hardware, it's about presence everywhere you look. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.